You ever had someone say something to you that felt like they were slamming a door shut and locking it forever? That's exactly how it felt that morning when my dad looked me straight in the eye and said, "If you marry her, don't come back." No hesitation, no softening, just this flat, cold delivery like he was cutting me out of the family with one sentence. And I just stood there, coffee in my hand, my mind suddenly blank, thinking, did he really just say that? Truth is, I didn't say a single word back. Not, why? Not, what's that supposed to mean? Nothing. I just let the silence hang in the air so long it felt like even the walls were uncomfortable. I'm 32 years old, you know. I've been living on my own for a decade, paying my own bills, building my own life. But in that moment, standing there in my parents' kitchen, I felt like I was 17 again. Like I needed permission I didn't even want. The thing is, the woman he was talking about, her name's Emily. She's smart, she's kind. She's the type of person who notices if you're having a bad day before you even say a word. We met at a friend's barbecue almost 3 years ago, bonded over how badly the burgers were burned, and it just clicked from there. We've built a life together, shared holidays, gone through rough patches, and honestly, she's the one. My mom's always been polite to her, not warm, not cold, just polite. My dad, though, he's never liked her, and he's not the type to hide it. Little comments over the years. She's not from around here. Her family background is different. Are you sure she's the one? All those vague digs that don't sound bad enough to start a fight but cut just deep enough to make a point. I used to think he'd come around eventually. But that morning, when he threw down that line like it was an ultimatum from a king, I realized this wasn't something he was going to get over. And I could see something in his eyes, too. It wasn't just dislike. It was fear. Fear of what? I don't know. Losing control over me? Tarnishing the family name? Some old prejudice he didn't want to admit to? I didn't ask, because I knew if I opened my mouth right then, I'd either blow up or I'd say something I couldn't take back. So, I just set my coffee down, said, "All right then," and walked out. No slammed door, no dramatic exit. Just quiet. But inside, my thoughts were racing. For the next few days, I didn't bring it up with Emily. She could tell something was off. She asked if everything was okay. And I told her it was just work stress. I hated lying. But how do you even bring that up? Hey, by the way, my dad says if I marry you, I'm not welcome in the family anymore. Yeah. Not exactly the kind of thing you drop casually over dinner. But the truth is, I didn't want to dump that weight on her. Not yet. Part of me hoped maybe he'd calm down, realize how ridiculous it sounded, and call me to apologize. But my dad isn't that kind of man. He's the type who, once he's decided he's right, will defend that position even if the whole world proves him wrong. And maybe I got a little of that stubbornness from him, because I didn't call him either. I just kept planning the wedding with Emily, sending out invitations, talking to vendors, acting like everything was fine. But in my head, I was picturing the wedding day and wondering, would he actually go through with it? Would my dad, the man who taught me how to ride a bike, who coached my little league games, actually stay home and miss my wedding because he didn't approve of the woman I loved? And if he did, what would that mean for us after? You know, I kept replaying that moment in the kitchen, wondering if I should have fought back, defended Emily right there. But another part of me, the part that was starting to get a little strategic, thought maybe it was better this way. Let him think I was just going to quietly go along with things. Let him think he had the upper hand. Because if he thought he knew how this was going to play out, he didn't. Not even close. Somewhere in the middle of all that, I made a decision. If my dad wanted to draw a line in the sand, then fine. But when I crossed it, I was going to make sure I did it in a way that he would never forget. And that thought, that little spark of defiance, It stayed with me through every cake tasting, every suit fitting, every seating chart adjustment. By the time the wedding day got closer, I wasn't just thinking about marrying Emily anymore. I was thinking about the look on my dad's face when he realized I wasn't playing his game. And trust me, I had a plan. The morning of the wedding, I woke up earlier than I thought I would. The sun was just barely coming in through the blinds, and for a second, I almost forgot what day it was. Then it hit me, this was it. The day everything was going to change, one way or another. I lay there for a minute, just staring at the ceiling, thinking about that sentence my dad threw at me weeks earlier. If you marry her, don't come back. And I'm thinking, well, Dad, I guess we're going to find out if you meant it. The venue was perfect, small, intimate, this old brick building with big windows and a little courtyard where we'd set up the chairs. Emily was in another room getting ready, and I could hear bursts of laughter from her bridesmaids down the hall. My guys were all here too, tying ties, checking boutonnieres, making sure I was breathing. I kept glancing at my phone. No message from Dad. No, good luck. No, we'll be there. Part of me still hoped I'd see his name pop up. But nothing. And here's the thing. I didn't let it crush me. Not today. I'd already decided weeks ago that if he wasn't going to show up as my father, I wasn't going to beg him to. What he didn't know, what no one but Emily and my best man knew, was that I had set something in motion that was going to speak louder than any speech he could have made. You know, weddings have this weird mix of chaos and calm. You're running around making sure the flowers are right. But then, you have these quiet moments where you're just standing there, taking it all in. And every quiet moment, my mind went back to him. Was he sitting at home right now, feeling proud for sticking to his principles? Was he waiting for me to call and ask him one more time to come? Or was he so stubborn that he'd just sit there, pretending today wasn't happening? The guests started arriving. Friends, cousins, neighbors, people I hadn't seen in years. And with each familiar face, there was this quick flicker of relief it wasn't him. But at least it wasn't an empty seat either. We'd deliberately left 2 seats open in the front row, just in case. Yeah. Part of me wanted him to walk in and see that. Wanted him to realize there was a place for him, even if he chose not to take it. The ceremony started right on time. I stood at the front, hands clasped, heart doing this steady but heavy beat in my chest. And then the music changed, and everyone stood. Emily walked in, and for a second, everything else just disappeared. She looked incredible, glowing, calm, with that little smile she does when she's trying not to cry. I thought, this is it. This is worth everything. We went through the vows, the readings, the whole thing. And then, it was time for the part I'd been waiting for. The officiant announced that before we exchanged rings, there was going to be a short reading from a family letter. People glanced around, curious. Emily reached into this little decorative box we'd placed on the table. Inside was an envelope. My envelope. Weeks earlier, I'd written something. Not to Emily, not to our guests, but to my dad. A letter I knew he'd never read if I just mailed it. But today, in front of everyone, his words and mine were about to share the same space. Emily handed the envelope to my best man, who opened it and began to read. The first line wasn't mine, it was his. I had copied, word for word, what he said to me that morning. If you marry her, don't come back. You could feel the air in the room shift. Some people looked at each other, confused, others uncomfortable. My best man paused just long enough for the words to settle. Then he kept going, reading my response, the one I never spoke aloud that day. I had written about what love means to me, about respect, about choosing happiness even when it costs you. I didn't mention his name, didn't point a finger, but anyone who knew me knew. It wasn't bitter. It wasn't angry. It was final. And as my best man's voice carried those words across the room, I felt this strange mix of sadness and peace. This was my line in the sand, and I had crossed it in the most public, undeniable way. When the reading ended, there was this moment quiet, heavy before the officiant gently moved us back into the ceremony. We exchanged rings, said, "I do," and the room erupted in applause. And yeah, I scanned the crowd one last time. That front row seat was still empty, but for the first time, it didn't feel like a loss. It felt like closure. The rest of the evening was a blur of dancing, toasts, and laughter. But every now and then, I caught someone looking at me a little differently, like they'd just seen a side of me they didn't expect. And maybe that's what I wanted. Not revenge, not to hurt him back, just to show him and everyone that I wasn't afraid to live my life without his approval. Still, as the night wound down and the last song played, I couldn't help but wonder what was going through his mind when he heard about what I'd done. Because I knew, eventually, he would. 3 days after the wedding, my phone rang. I didn't recognize the number, but something in me knew before I even answered who it was. I just sat there for a second, staring at the screen, debating if I should let it go to voicemail. But curiosity got the better of me. I answered, and sure enough, it was my dad. His voice was calm, almost too calm, like he'd been rehearsing. "I heard about what you did," he said. "No, hello. No congratulations. Just straight into it." I didn't respond right away. I wanted him to fill the silence. And he did. He said some people had called him after the wedding, told him about the letter, told him how I had his words read out loud in front of everyone. He said, "You embarrassed me." I almost laughed. Embarrassed him? I thought about all the years of little jabs, all the subtle ways he'd tried to control my life, and how he thought one sentence could decide who I marry. I told him, "I didn't embarrass you, Dad. I told the truth." He went quiet, long enough that I thought maybe he'd hung up. Then he said, "You didn't have to make it public." And that's when it hit me. He didn't regret what he'd said. He just regretted that people knew. I said, "I didn't make it public to hurt you. I made it public so you'd understand that I'm done hiding parts of my life to keep you comfortable." And then I waited. He muttered something about needing time and hung up. No apology. No acknowledgement of my marriage. Just gone. I thought maybe that was it. Maybe we'd go months without speaking. But a week later, I got another call, this time from my mom. She'd been at a friend's house when she saw photos from the wedding online. She said she'd cried when she saw me smiling. Said Emily looked beautiful. And then she whispered, "I wish I'd been there." And I could hear it in her voice, she meant it. We talked for an hour. She didn't defend Dad. She didn't excuse him. She just listened. And before we hung up, she said, "Give him time. He's more proud of you than he'll admit." I wanted to believe that. I really did. But time went on. And nothing from him. No card, no visit, not even a "How's married life?" And you know what? Life kept moving anyway. Emily and I settled into our place. Filled it with wedding gifts, inside jokes, and the quiet comfort of knowing we'd made it through something big together. Every now and then, though, I'd catch myself wondering if he was thinking about me, about us, about that empty seat in the front row. And then, something happened. About 3 months after the wedding, I got a letter in the mail. Handwritten, no return address, but I knew the handwriting instantly. It was short, barely a paragraph. It said, "I don't agree with how you did it. I still think you could have handled it differently. But she makes you happy. And I can see that. I'm not ready to say more. But I'm not closing the door." I read it twice, 3 times. And here's the thing. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't a full acceptance. But it was something. And maybe that's all I needed right now, a crack in the door he'd slammed shut. I didn't rush to respond. I didn't call him right away. I just tucked the letter into the same decorative box that held our vows and thought, Maybe one day, we'll talk. Maybe one day, we'll sit across a table and laugh about how stubborn we both were. Or maybe we won't. But either way, I'm not living my life waiting for him to approve. Because here's what I learned. Sometimes the people you love will force you to choose between them and your happiness. And the hardest thing, the thing that keeps you up at night, is realizing that choosing yourself doesn't mean you stopped loving them. It just means you started loving yourself too. So yeah, my dad said, if you marry her, don't come back. And I didn't come back, not in the way he meant. But I also didn't close the door forever. I left it cracked, just in case he ever decides to walk through it.